call the member for Baulkham Hills.
Thank you, Mr Acting Speaker. I rise to support the Protection of the Environment Operations Amendment Illegal Waste Disposal Bill 2013, and in doing so, Mr Acting Speaker, I have to declare an interest. In my previous capacity as the Chief Executive of the Civil Contractors Federation, I had to work a lot with these waste disposal companies, and many of them, as the previous speaker alluded to, did the wrong thing. They did the wrong thing repeatedly. They did the wrong thing to the people of New South Wales, to the environment of New South Wales, and I won't embarrass them again by naming them, Mr Acting Speaker, but what I can tell you is that they are often identified as donors to the Labor Party. So I think it will be interesting to see what type of amendments the Labor Party do dish up in the upper house, because I'd be happy to name them, Nick, but we just have to see them on your donation list, because some of them come from your part of the world. You know who I'm talking about, Nick. You know exactly who I'm talking about. So I think we should put on notice here in this chamber, Mr Acting Speaker, the fact that these amendments in the upper house that the member for Bankstown has alluded to will probably be coming from those waste disposal companies that have been both embarrassed by the legislation, embarrassed by their donations to the Labor Party, and of course embarrassed by the fact that they've been previously breached for doing the wrong thing when it comes to illegal waste. Nevertheless, Mr Acting Speaker, as I mentioned, I'm pleased to speak in support of this Protection of the Environment Operations Amendment Bill. Illegal waste dumping appears to be on the increase in Sydney and surrounding areas. This activity not only impacts on our environment, but also potentially on the health of the community. It is vitally important that the Environmental Protection Authority, as the environmental regulator in New South Wales, has the appropriate tools at its disposal to take all necessary enforcement action to prevent rogue operators from continuing to dump waste unlawfully. But for some repeat offenders, many of them labelled as donors, no number of financial penalties appear to be a deterrent. Indeed, they'll pay the financial penalties, they'll then pay their donations to the Labor Party, and then they'll continue to do the wrong thing. This is simply the cost of doing business to those, and those costs are not outweighed by the cost of compliance according to these rogue operators. Mr Acting Speaker, the bill will strengthen the EPA's powers and provide the courts with increased sentencing options. And Mr Acting Speaker, those sentencing options are probably the only thing that these Labor donors will listen to. Specifically, the bill will, 1, enable the courts to impose a custodial sentence of up to 2 years for repeat convictions of serious strict liability waste-related offences within 5 years in relation to or as well as a financial penalty for repeat offenders. It will apply waste and environmental levy to all waste received at any licensed waste facility, not just landfills, to remove the incentive to stockpile unrecyclable waste and potentially dumping it to avoid paying the levy at landfill. And I know of examples of this occurring outside of the radius of the Sydney rules, and many companies are going as far as Goulburn just to avoid that levy. We introduced a new offence for knowingly providing false or misleading information with maximum penalties of 18 months imprisonment or $500,000 for a corporation or $240,000 for an individual. It will enable EPA to seize and impound vehicles used in repeat illegal waste disposal offences, and the court to order forfeiture of these vehicles on conviction, subject to appropriate safeguards. And of course, it will enable a monetary benefits calculation model to be prescribed for use in legal proceedings, whereas monetary benefits order is sought. So, Mr Acting Speaker, the logical step is to enable the EPA to seize and impound the assets that allows these people to carry out their activities, their vehicles. Without these vehicles, they can't do business. Without access to their trucks or their boats, these rogue operators will be unable to dump waste. This threat is likely to be an effective deterrent and one that will help break the belief of repeat offenders that they can continue their activities unchecked. These amendments send the message to illegal waste operators and dumpers that if you dump waste, expect to lose your truck. These amendments clearly state that the people of New South Wales have had enough and will not tolerate these cowardly and unscrupulous acts which place the health of our community and the environment at risk. And if I can just close, Mr Acting Speaker, in referring the House to another public debate on dumping and rubbish, and that of course is the proposed container deposit levy, which I am already on the record as supporting, Mr Acting Speaker. I know Labor are probably going to be very uncomfortable with it because, again, some of their donors are the worst offenders of no, it's a levy, and I refer the member to the fact that this is something that the Labor Party in South Australia were very keen to enforce, and I'm just wondering why you're not at one with your comrades in Adelaide. But nevertheless, Mr Acting Speaker, this is the sort of law that a progressive Liberal government will introduce to make environmental practices more attractive to businesses, more attractive to people who have in the past done the wrong thing. I think like this illegal dumping regulation, the container deposit levy will act in accordance with the spirit of its proposal, and that is to keep rubbish away from our public places. I commend Minister Parker, who is leading the debate on behalf of the states very ably. She's leading the debate on behalf of the states at COAG. It's no easy feat. But I believe that she certainly has her head around this issue, and I look forward to having that debate in this place against the Labor Party as well. Mr Acting Speaker, as I said in my opening remarks, I'm concerned that the Labor Party have already flagged amendments in the upper house. I suspect those amendments are coming through from their donors who have been previously breached and charged for illegal dumping. I plead with them to clean up your act, pardon the pun, stay away from illegal dumping. I mean, just stick with dumping on your leaders, don't dump on our environment, and I encourage you to support this act and this bill unopposed. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker.
The question is, this bill